Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The New Gods, issue number 6, dated January 1972. Although this title hit the newsstands at the end of 71. I'm gonna say I had a blast with this comic. I loved it. This comic sung to me. And the reason is that this is my first Kirby review. Like the batshit crazy story that Jack Kirby wanted to tell, he told it. It wasn't always logical. There's a lot of illogical moments, but nevertheless, the story he wanted to tell, he told it here, and it is terrific. It is action. It is theater. It is drama. It's also a bit personal because I can definitely see where Jack Kirby's World War II experiences actually are kind of an integral part of the story. And also Jack Kirby's love of movies and TV. Because the way that this story is laid out, this is the way a movie director would create a comic. So when I'm looking at the narratives and kind of just the general structure of both the story and how it's laid out, this is more of a movie, like more of a movie director telling a story than a comic book guy. So that was kind of fun to watch, and like I said, it doesn't always make sense, but nevertheless, it is a fun story. This really is kind of the birth of Star Wars. I know that George Lucas had a space saga in mind and probably following the trope of like the two kingdoms fighting each other, kind of like King Lear. Because that's what kind of Star Wars kind of is. It's a little bit basically Space King Lear, at least in my eyes. And Jack Kirby kind of like laid out the template in these New Gods stories, because this was Kirby's idea of Star Wars before Star Wars actually existed, and this is the template that definitely George Lucas is lying through his teeth if he says that he never read these and these were not an influence. There's just way too much. Even in this issue, I see things that probably George Lucas remembered when he created Star Wars. So anyway, I'm going to look at the cover. The cover is amazing. I love the color. I love the use of the green and the red. Excuse me, my throat's a little dry. We see part of it is sort of this very abstract imagery of this this mummy being tied to the mast of this ship that's under siege, with these two kind of demonic figures here, and it looks great. And then we have these two little circles here of our stars, Orion and Light Ray here. Both of them, this is the big dramatic moment that they were waiting for their entire lives, and it's shown here. And the energy that is on this cover, it is matched inside of it. It is a fun story to read. So I'm going to get into it. I did not read the reprint. I'm sorry, I could not read those 1940 reprints. Turn the page. I'm going to take a look at the splash page here. And it doesn't give me the creative team. I'll get that in the next page. But the thing that's noteworthy about this splash page is, once again, if this story were being filmed, this is the point of view shot they would have used to open it up. And I'm not going to quite equate it to the classic opening of the Imperial cruisers, filling up the space on the screen when the Star Wars first opens up. But again, there is a little bit of that here. You have the huge oncoming menace coming upon its prey, which is this ship, which is simply just minding its own business. And again, maybe a little Star Wars was taken from this. So we see this very large sea creature here. It is red. It is spiked. It is large. It is heading toward this what appears to be a cargo ship. The one positive is that the crew has plenty of warning. So they saw this thing coming. So at least the crew is given a fighting chance here. And we're told that the war that's going on Apocalypse is coming to Earth. And this portion of the battle, from Apocalypse's point of view, is with the Deep Six. These underwater inhabitants, you can say, of Apocalypse. They're very powerful. One thing about Apocalypse is that you had a lot of extremes. You have some of these very extremely powerful individuals, and then the rest are just these just poor slaves who just live in hovels and have nothing, and the only thing they could do is stroke Darkseid. So in this case, the Deep Six, they're sort of like the Inhumans, I guess, and they're superpowered entities that are based on ocean life. So I'm going to turn the page, and then we see the huge entity. It comes crashing right through the cargo ship here. Now, it looks like a lot of the members of the crew are going into the water alive. So at this point, we don't know whether there's any fatalities or not. Based on the type of destruction and the type of action that's going on, you have to think so. But Kirby realizes his audience, so he can't be that stark, and he also knows about the comic code. So it's going to be assumed that these individuals made it out of the ship alive. And we see this kind of great kind of Moby Dick type imagery. Gonna turn the page. Then we see kind of like a header to what's going on. We see that this sea creature is a mutation. So it was at one time a normal, Earth-type creature, probably a whale. And the Deep Six have the power of mutation. So they can kind of create mutants. And they mutated this whale. They increased its strength, they increased its power, they probably increased its intelligence, because the creature would need to take orders from their new master. And this is what is happening. So sort of the sea creature has been mutated, but it's welcoming this mutation. And we find that very, very few things can stop it. Cargo ships, fall. Battleships, atomic submarines, they're just torn into pieces by this creature. So the Deep Six is kind of like flexing their muscle at this point. And we see that even private yachts, the very wealthy, are finding out that their money won't protect them from the Deep Six. So we're going to look at the story of one of these inhabitants of one of these yachts, and we told that it's going to be from the SS Aurora. And again, it's kind of the movie technique. You go from the larger picture of the creature busting through whatever it needs to attack. Then we see the wreckage, and kind of the screen gets smaller, the story gets smaller, and we see the atomic subs. We see kind of a change that nothing matters to this creature. It can just destroy it. And then we're left with the imagery of like one of the victims, because there's a lot of carnage, there's a lot of waste, and this is telling us this is the Aurora. Again, this is kind of like a movie type of setup. You can turn the page. And now this is, I guess, maybe the formal splash page, because we're given a bit of a prologue as to what's going on here. Now this is very different. They would kind of do this differently at DC, where they kind of would verbally wrap up what's going on if it's a continuing story, rather than with Marvel where they'll have like little flashbacks. But at this point, we see the three members of the Aurora. This is basically Archie. This is basically All in the Family here, and we see as they're on this life raft, suddenly out of the water comes Orion. Orion. He's the main hero of the New Gods title. He is the son of Darkseid, but he is turned against his father, and he's battling his father on the behalf of like New Genesis, which is sort of a rival planet of the two. The gods are linked, but at some point they've been separated, and the two kingdoms kind of evolved into different states. I think one of the Star Treks with F. Murray Abrams kind of had that story about the societies. So anyway, and again, this looks like something that would come from like a movie or TV director, because the point of view is we see that Orion is just coming right out of the water like a Polaris missile, and if you remember those newsreels, I mean, it was actually kind of a spectacular sight of these missiles coming from these submarines. And this is what Jack Kirby is trying to create. And we are told here that this comic is edited, written, and drawn by Jack Kirby. And the inker is Mike Royker. These two were a long-standing team together. The big reason is that Royker always inked what Jack drew on the paper or on the page. Now, he had a huge problem with Vince Colletta. Vince Colletta, who valued speed more than anything else, would regularly kind of basically ink over a lot of Jack's drawings, and that drove Jack Kirby crazy. Even though I would say that Vince Colletta kind of did give Kirby's work a bit of sharpness and a bit and also a lot of symmetry, because one of the things about Kirby was that he tended to draw things out of proportion, and Vince Colletta would kind of fix that. But Mike Royker was like, no, whatever Jack writes, whatever Jack draws on the page, I'm going to ink it. So those are the two main contributors. Jack at this time was editing and writing. He wanted to make sure he got credit for creating those stories, because that didn't happen in Marvel. Because of the Marvel method, the artist is the one who plots the story. So they're the ones who tell the story from pictures, and then the writer would come in and fill out the word balloons, and then write whatever text should be there. And the thing is that from Jack Kirby's point of view, he felt that he wasn't given enough credit, that he was just the guy who drew the stories. And he was like, no, I created these stories, but you wouldn't know that listening to Stan Lee at the time. So when he came to DC, he was a little he was a little paranoid about having someone steal credit from him, so to speak. And he tended to overdo stuff. Like, his dialogue isn't very good. The stories aren't logical, but they are fun and they make sense. So I think if you're going to criticize Kirby, the dialogue is the problem. And that's what a lot of people had a problem with his dialogue. It was a bit clunky. He was a guy who can tell a story visually, but he wasn't a guy who could write one. But he writes fun stories, and this is one of them. So anyway, the three members of the Aurora, they're a little surprised here by this appearance by Orion. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, we see Orion, and he is hovering over the three survivors of the SS Aurora. And they're telling him, hey, we kind of need some help here. And and they're kind of a little astonished by the device he's using. Remember, this is 1972. We did not have these type of devices at this point. So they're like, hey, you kind of look a little strange here, floating over us. But the thing is, Orion is on a mission. And this is where Jack Kirby's, I think, World War II experiences come in. Orion is on a mission, and he's kind of just ignoring these people. And he has things to do. Now, it doesn't mean he has total disregard for them or that he's not concerned about them, because he clearly is from his thoughts later on. But not now. But he's worried about his mission. He's like, hey, they look good. I'm going to do what I have to do. And again, this is sort of, I think, a call to Jack Kirby's World War II experience. Also, it's a little different from what was normally seen from superheroes, in that, if there's someone in distress, they would get the immediate attention, where Orion is kind of like, hey, I'm a little bit busy here. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but I can't babysit you either. That's something that was normally not seen from our heroes, either at Marvel or DC. So once again, Orion is just focused on the mission here. The three survivors here are a bit skeptical of Orion, because they don't know why he's not paying much attention to them. Because from their point of view, they're the most important thing in that ocean right now. And they're watching someone who's like, no, you guys aren't the most important thing. So anyway, Orion does go into action in helping them. What he does, he has a device, and it's one of these devices that's designed to be very convenient for the author. So what this device does, it just happens to put a magnetic lock on the raft here. So the thing here is, at this point, Orion, after he did his work, he finally addressed the people in distress. I'm going to turn the page. It's always very convenient having these devices that can get you out of a plot hole. So anyway, the Orion is concerned about these people, and he's going to do what he can to help them. They're kind of surprised here by Orion's devices. But nevertheless, they're here to take the help, because they know that they would not last too long in the open water here. Orion is informing them that he is on a mission, and he is on a dangerous mission. So he's here to do something else that doesn't involve them. And he's basically telling them, listen, I'm going to help you as much as I can, but if the mission calls for it, I'm going to have to cut you loose. And you're going to have to accept that. And I think that's something else that came from Jack Kirby and his World War II experience. Because he told stories where he was in a platoon of 1,000 men, and he and 4 other people were the only people who survived this one mission.
Out of 1,000 men, only me and 4 other guys came out.
And I remember I think he also got trench foot, which is when when your feet are cold and wet for too long, the skin and everything starts to deteriorate, and that's something you can literally lose a limb over. And Jack Kirby got that during World War II. So anyway, going back to the story. Orion is still kind of questioning himself. He says, listen, maybe this wasn't the wisest choice, to take these people along. But nevertheless, the choice has been made, and there's nothing we can do about it. So everyone's kind of like, they're stuck in this really not so good situation here. The daughter is kind of catching on that maybe Orion isn't an Earthman. So, it's kind of like clues are kind of happening. And it turns out that Orion, his mother box is leading to where Light Ray is. So Orion is usually teamed up with his best friend Light Ray. Light Ray is the one who kind of keeps Orion on the good side rather than the dark side. So again, this idea, this duality of Orion, the sun, who has dark side, Darth Vader, as his father, but at the same time he's on a different side of the Force. So again, this is something that easily Jack Kirby can say, hey, George took that. So anyway, he comes across his friend Light Ray here. Light Ray is actually the mummified image on the cover. It turned out in the previous issue, this is actually not like he wasn't turned into an Egyptian mummy, but that he was wrapped in kind of this binding. So he's imprisoned here. He's not like a modern art figure. Orion, he comes closer to the boat, and suddenly he arrives and he reaches on it. Can turn the page. And we see from below that Orion is firing on the mummy, the mummified image. And this is to loosen the binds that are trapping Light Ray. Because it turned out that the binding is actually kelp. But the thing is, the kelp has been mutated by the Deep Six. And that's their power. They can mutate sea creatures. So this is sort of like this binding might as well has been adamantium. But the science that Orion has access to is able to break these bonds. Then the two kind of Orion takes off his helmet. So this means kind of Orion is kind of in civilian mode at this point, or he's in non-combat mode. And of course, he has this very close relationship with Light Ray. It's very similar to other relationships that we're seeing in Kirby comics. For example, Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm. This is sort of the relationship that seems closest and analog to me with Orion and Light Ray. With Light Ray, he's sort of the Johnny Storm character. He's kind of like the cheerful, confident. He's kind of like that happy go-getter, lucky go-getter guy. And we see Orion. He's kind of like the dark guy. He's the bad boy, but he wants to be the good guy. And Light Ray is just sort of like keeping him on the side of goodness, so to speak. Gummies. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, with Light Ray free, he's able to join Orion and the three survivors of the yacht that was crashed by the Deep Six. Light Ray is kind of keeping Orion up with what he knows, and Orion's doing the same. So this is sort of like how Jack decided to kind of update the reader. You should have read the last issue, but in case you didn't, here's a little bit of an explanation. Whereas later on, they would actually have kind of a flashback here, because the comic book companies like Jim Shooter, they found that to be much more effective. We could see that Orion kind of has an inferior complex. But Light Ray here is kind of like keeping him, hey bro, calm down, it's fine. I'm sorry I screwed things up. Just relax. And but Orion is saying that he's sad to see Light Ray here on Earth, because he respects Light Ray so much. He's saying that having a dignified gentleman like you here, it's horrible. Men like you should not be in situations like this. It's like guys like me. I'm the one who has the demon in me. I'm the one who should be on the front line, sacrificing myself. So my gene pool doesn't go on, but yours does. And the survivors of the Aurora, they're still confused. They want some answers because they don't know the whole background of this, because they're just hearing Deep Six and Apocalypse and stuff like that. And Orion and Light Ray, they're preparing for another battle because they know they're gonna have to fight this. They're gonna have to square off against the Deep Six at some point. We see there is friction amongst this family. Basically, you have the patriarch, which is the father. He's kind of like a loudmouth Archie Bunker type. He was definitely the stereotypical American dad in the late 60s, early 70s. And then we have sort of the Mike Stivic character. He's younger, much more liberal, has different ideas, doesn't want to follow in daddy's footsteps. So the father and son are always at odds. And then you have the daughter. She's playing kind of like the Gloria character, where she's kind of caught in the middle between these two characters. Because the thing is, she doesn't want to be involved with the fighting, but she ends up being drawn into it. So that's the dynamic going on with the survivors here, because they do play a role in this story. As Archie Bunker here is whining about him being inconvenienced, Light Ray is taking the please hold on, your call is important to us. That's the role that Light Ray is playing right now. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, the two, they introduce each other. We get a name for the guy, Farley. Doesn't really matter. Light Ray here, he's kind of making a commentary on Earth cultures, pointing out that when Farley extended his hand for a handshake, Orion was, oh yes, that primitive tribal custom that you would do to make sure that your opponent was truly unarmed. So Light Ray is kind of just finding a little bit of interest. He just finds it interesting. So anyway, the family's still bickering though. Apparently, the son isn't allowed to voice any of his opinions because the father finds him to be kind of too wimpy. And then they go into kind of an argument over war. The son is a conscionable objector. Conscionable objectors are people who are drafted to fight but refuse to fight. That doesn't mean they aren't sent on dangerous missions. Usually they're sent on the worst missions because while they won't pick up a gun to fight, they'll do other things. Like, who knows, like maybe they're the ones who are delivering messages from soldier to soldier, or maybe they're the ones helping the medics get injured guys out in the field. Stuff that's really dangerous. So anyway, this kind of goes along with Kirby's growing admiration toward actually the peace movement. Even though he was a guy who fought in World War II, he was also, I can understand their point of view about not wanting to fight in Vietnam and stuff like that. So when Kirby was doing the New Gods, also the Forever People, there was a tip. He was tipping his hat to the doves and not the hawks. Then it turns out that Orion finds something in the ship itself, in the ship's hull, I guess. And it looks to be a monstrosity, according to what Orion has to say. Light Ray is actually, he already knows about the entity that Orion is talking about. And he said that basically they just left it here to kind of grow as they were doing stuff outside. And we see that the father here wants to be of help because he senses that these two are revving up for a fight, and he's saying, listen, I'll fight too. And Orion is saying, listen, we might need you, at some point. Maybe we'll need Operation Human Shield or something like that. But until then, you kind of just stay back there until we can find a useful way to sacrifice you. Gonna turn the page. And then we see what the monstrosity is. One thing I should note, there's not too many ads in this. I don't know if this was ad free or not. I mean the scan I'm using, not the comic book. So anyway, yeah, so we're still in the story here. Because this scan I have doesn't have any ads. So it's saving a little bit of time with the story. And we see the monstrosity that's in the hull. It's a mutation that was created by the Deep Six, and it's something called the sender, which basically it's kind of like a router. The sender would get various messages from the outside. I don't know exactly what it's measuring, but then it would send these messages to the Deep Six if Thing found these messages important. So I guess maybe if there's a large convoy of ships, the Deep Six would take interest in that. And the sender here is a creature of a mutation created by the Deep Six. It's being used by the Deep Six. And what Orion and Light Ray want to do, they want to take it out. Now, I think Jack Kirby knew that if they killed this thing, that would kind of undermine his message. So what happens is that Light Ray, he uses his powers of mutation, and he's going to kind of basically metamorphoses this thing. So this thing is going to change from what it currently is to something that Light Ray wants for his liking. I'm going to turn the page. So we see Light Ray, he's bathing the creature in these rays. The creature, who only knows what it was, is seeing everything slip away. Its intelligence is slipping away, its personality, its sense of self, it's all disappearing at this point, and it's becoming a new entity. I think there was an episode of Star Trek that was like that. And we see that Light Ray's being a little cryptic. He's kind of talking about his own ability to do this, but he's not necessarily talking about what his end goal will be. Orion is noting the metamorphosis here, but he's not really adding anything else to it. So basically, the life form has been changed into a cube. This is sort of like that episode of Star Trek, the original generation, with the aliens who had the ability to basically take all the water out of everyone's systems, and they would all become like these small little blocks. And it's similar to that, but the thing is that the block is still alive and active, and it will just morph into something that Light Ray wants. Light Ray is kind of bored with his abilities, because again, he recognizes that this is a device that's designed to save pages in telling the story. This is a plot convenience device. And what Light Ray is planning on converting the creature to is a caller. So rather than being a sender who kind of just transmits the messages, the caller is going to make a specific call, and they're going to call, and the caller is going to call the Deep Six. So that's Light Ray's end game here. Then we see kind of this somewhat homoerotic moment where Light Ray and Orion, they face each other, and Light Ray says, "You know that call must be answered." It cannot be ignored. And Orion says, it will reverse the course of the sea beast and the deep six and bring them back here. So everything's set. So the mission's set. But the problem is that they have these three people who are not directly involved in this war, and they kind of don't want to fight this war. And they're kind of like, hey guys, can you get us out of here? But the thing is that everything is ready for this battle. And they're like, no, we can't have you screwing up our time frame. We have to take advantage of this situation right now. And we can't spend a few hours getting you out of this area. So can you stop bothering us? Gonna turn the page. And I think, again, you can kind of see Jack Kirby's World War II experience. So we see the caller is working. Because apparently it looks like there was this battleship. And it was an open sea. And it looked like the mutated whale and the deep six were going to attack this ship. But the thing is, as they were getting closer to their prey, there's a call heard in the ocean. And the call is being heard by both the mutated whale here and by the deep six. And it's one of those calls that they can't ignore. They have to answer it. And they know it. So they're sort of aware at this point that if this is happening, it has to involve light ray. And I don't think they know that Orion is there or not, but they know light ray is doing something. And so they're in discussions about this. I think some of the members will die of the Deep Six. So they're called the Deep Six now. I don't know if it's 6 of them at this point. Light ray is trying to illuminate the waters because his powers are kind of light rays that are very powerful. And basically he's trying to light up the sea so they can find the Deep Six here. Because they know the Deep Six is around. Because they called the Deep Six, but they're still searching where exactly. And it does look like that the one of the members of the Deep Six did bypass what Light Ray was doing. So Light Ray was trying to kind of light up the sea so you can see better. But the thing is, their foe, Jafar, and we're told that in the dialogue box, they got through. So, and again, this is probably very similar to some of Jack Kirby's World War II experiences. You know, they would set up reinforcements and only for the enemy to slip through them. Going to turn the page. We're going back to our 3 survivors from the Orion. The father and son, they're fighting again. The daughter doesn't like it. She's tired of it. Apparently, they took this trip because the father thought that maybe they can reconcile a little bit. Because, you know, a lot of their disagreements are becoming sharper and sharper. They're also talking about Light Ray and Orion. They're not sure whether they're human or not. The father doesn't really care. He's saying, listen, they're being helpful, they're being brave, things that you aren't, and I welcome their help. You know, this is the guy, this is the Kent Brockman guy who's going to welcome, you know, the invaders.
And I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords.
The son reminds the dad that they do have their little daughter here. Well, you know, his little sister, you know, and his youngest daughter. So they have to think about her. But the thing is, she's very defensive at this time because she's like, you're just bringing me into this fight. And you're just using me as a pawn, and I don't like it. The father's saying, there you go, you're upsetting your little sister here by being, you know, such a little pussy. And that you'll never change. And then he talks about his World War II experiences as, you know, as kind of like, you know, you can't dispute what I say. You can't go against what I say because I did this, 20 years earlier. And but then they come across, as they're bickering, they come across what Light Ray was doing as he was remutating what the Deep Six had left for them. Can turn the page. And we see it's becoming a device. And they're astonished by what's happening because just a few moments ago it was nothing but a cube. And now it's kind of changing into this device. The son is impressed with the technology. He doesn't seem as startled by it. But the thing is, the son also says, listen, we should leave now. We still have the raft. There's still time. Nothing's happening. And we'll take our chances out in the ocean. The father is agreeing to that, leaving by raft, only because he says, because of Lynn, I have to think of Lynn. Otherwise, I would be fighting with the new Genesis guy. But then, as the fight is going on, Lynn is noticing something that is trying to climb aboard their boat at this point. And I'm going to turn the page. And it turns out to be Jafar. Jafar is the leader of the Deep Six. He is one ugly mofo. He's green. He's slimy. He probably smells awful. The two men are kind of startled by his appearance. Jafar tries to kind of turn the scales here, literally and figuratively, because he says, no, you're the ugly guys. You're the ugly guys. This is, can you imagine, if all the ugly kids got together and they convinced themselves that they were the good guys, they were the good-looking guys, and everyone else was ugly? I guess kind of like the Gingers episode in South Park. This is what Jafar's trying to do. He's looking at all those features that these humans have that he's jealous of, but he's saying, nah, they're ugly. Jafar, he's a little philosophical. He goes to the older man and he says, oh, does great Jafar outrage your standards of beauty? How deplorable. I've spoilt the little party so generously tendered by Orion and Light Ray. So at this point, Jafar is claiming that he is in control of the ship at this point. In that Orlando and Light Ray, they abandoned them. There's no hope for these people, and they're under the control of Jafar. And it looks like Jafar is going to strike out. So he doesn't look like one of the guys who's going to take a prisoner. It looks like he's going to murk. And he goes for the dad. But the thing is, the dad is frightened here. He's horrified. He's kind of just frozen. But Richard isn't. And Richard rushes to save his dad. And again, this is probably very reminiscent of when Jack Kirby was fighting in World War II. Maybe there was a guy who got nervous and he just wanted to run off. And, Jack had to run in and kind of save both their lives. So as the father is kind of just caught in this grip of fear, the son Richard rushes into action to protect his father. And turn the page. He strikes at Jafar, but he really doesn't do any damage to him. And Jafar's being very arrogant. And then he grabs Richard. He's saying, listen, I'm going to make an example out of you. I'm going to use my mutation powers not only to kill you, but to humiliate you. And Richard, he's feeling his life slipping away. He's horrified. He's crying out. And Jafar's saying, when they see what I've done to your face, they'll know not to mess with me. And he basically kind of turns Richard into the Silver Surfer. Not quite the Silver Surfer, but kind of the Silver Surfer. This is similar to that episode of Star Trek, The New Generation. It was Charlie X, where he erased the face of one member of the crew. The daughter of the cowardly guy, she's horrified that her brother has been, not only murked, but murked in this way. This is such a horrible, grotesque way, just erasing his features. And again, Jack Kirby, World War II, saw plenty of fights, probably saw what he would view as kind of faceless victims.
I was talking with a lieutenant. Now, next thing I know, I'm all the way into the factory, and the lieutenant's a red smear on the wall.
Of the fighting. Then suddenly, out of the corner, Orion shows up. So Orion, they finally were able to track down Jafar, but it was unfortunately too late for young Richard here. Orion does feel bad about this. In later panels, I should say, but he's horrified by what Jafar has done. He has murked an innocent person, and this is horrifying. And Orion just lets out with a lot of his astro blast, as they're called, the astro force, and he throws Jafar off of the boat. So at this point, Jafar is in the water. I should add that the title of the story is Glory Boat, which better than Glory Hole. But Glory Boat is the name of this story. You can turn the page. And as Jafar is trying to reach the water where he's at his strongest, Orion stops him with a power blast here from the Astro Force. Orion is saying that he'll never see the sea alive. Orion, he goes into battle mode. He knows he's aware of Jafar's powers, but he's also angry enough that he's going to take him on. And the thing is that Orion unleashes so much astro force that he murks Jafar completely. Jafar is gone. He is disintegrated to the molecular level. The only death that was faster was probably the guys on the Titan submersible, and Orion, he has won this battle. But now Orion has to go back to the other two survivors, and he also sees Light Ray there, trying to do what he can. Again, he is an alien, so he might not be good at comforting aliens, even though he's obviously a very empathetic person. We see Orion. He as he's coming, he has his own thoughts. Pointing out the cost of war, saying that as this war continues, there are going to be more casualties, and these are going to be very real things. And this is something that Jack Kirby specifically talked about.
See, people think about war like they think about comics or they think about Broadway plays. They don't think that it's serious, that it's reality.
I'm going to turn the page. At this point, the father is basically he's in a caconic state, so he's completely out of it. He's actually gone into a fantasy world. His mind has snapped because he had saw the death of his son and done so brutally in front of him that he doesn't think that his son is actually dead, but that his son is actually on some beach continuing the fight. Orion and Light Ray, they note this. They note that the father, is basically snapped, and saying that this is basically, we've lost two people here. Light Ray, he's also being reflective on the issue. He does have a lot of empathy for Richard. He feels bad for this guy. But he's also saying that Richard could play one more role in this. That Richard somehow can still be a force of good, even from beyond the grave. And again, this touches on something that George Lucas did. You remember the scene where he's facing, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's facing off against Darth Vader. And Obi has that classic line of,
If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
this is something that could have been taken from this issue, because that's the role that that the deceased Richard is going to play at the end of this story. That he is going to be one with the source. George called it the Force. Jack called it the source. And the source is, again, there are vague similarities between the two, but it's also implying that by fighting this battle between the two gods, Richard will somehow also join the gods in this, this all-powerful entity, source. We see that they're preparing Richard for his upcoming role. The sister's distraught. They don't know what he's doing. She doesn't know what they're doing this for. Excuse me. But then they work on getting the sister out of the battle theater, Lynn. So what's happening here is that Orion is going to sacrifice his astro harness. That's the thing he's been flying around. Light Ray can fly naturally, but Orion needs the help of this kind of harness, this gyro harness. Lynn is being attached to it. Lynn is asking about her father, which is understandable. The father is in no shape to cooperate. His mind is completely snapped. And their attitude is that we won't have time to forcibly put your father on it. And even if your father was on it, he would probably accidentally sabotage your attempt to get to freedom, to safety. So we're going to be concerned with you. And your father has decided his fate. And that's what's happening. And go to the page. So we see the three men here. That they're waiting for the enemy. That they sense that this could be the final battle. Orion, he's just kind of informing the others that Lynn is going to be okay. That the harness will be fine, and that it will take care of her. The father is saying, the wind is rising, and I think I hear the enemy. And then Light Ray answers, yes, soldier, they're coming. They're just beyond the big wave. So, again, issues with Jack Kirby's dialogue. On one hand, the setup is great, but at the same time, the dialogue a little clunky. It's as clunky as my speaking patterns. So anyway, we see the two men. They're still waiting, and everything is kind of on hold. They've had a few hours, a few moments before destiny is going to arrive. The interesting thing is that Orion is talking to Light Ray about how he had murked a member of the Deep Six called Slig. So the thing was, I was calling them the Deep Six throughout. They were really the Deep Five, because Slig was gone by the time this issue hit. Then Jafar, he bit it. He ended up with Charlie Tuna in the can, and we see that they're just waiting for this final battle, this final countdown. Also, what is interesting about Slig is that a dozen years ago, I posted a lot on Craigslist, and there was one section called Rants and Raves, and it was always great. And I remember there was one guy called Slig, and it stood for Single Long Island Guy. And that guy was such a jerk off, and he irritated literally 90% of the people on that board, until one person finally figured out who he was. And this was the first time I seen a doxing in action. And they posted his name, they posted where he worked, and they posted his phone number, and a bunch of people called up to complain about him. And he actually had to beg, please stop doing that. This is my job. So that was the first time I was ever kind of seen doxing in action. So anyway, so to move beyond Slig, the single Long Island guy, we see that there's a huge panic amongst the sea creatures. We see carp, we see turtles, we see dolphins, we see sharks, everything. It's stingrays. They're all swimming in one direction, because it's sort of like they know that's the direction where the deep four, the now deep four, are coming from, along with their mutant whale. So they're getting out of the area. And the members of New Genesis, they're immediately attacked. And the first one to attack is Shanglo. Shanglo, the flying finback. And they're asking, what have you done to Jafar? Where is he? And Orion's going to have to explain to him that he's in the big cannery in the sky. Going to turn the page. And that's exactly what he does. Orion says, I discarded him in the source. He's in a demon pit. Because apparently when you go to the source, it doesn't matter whether you're good or evil. But what part of the source you go to, whether you're good or evil, matters. So Jafar and the rest of the remaining members of the Deep Six, they presumably will be going to the demon pits. So they will be going to the source, but they'll be going to the really crappy part of the source. We see that there's another character called Kronk, and he has this whip-like blade. So he has this whip-like device, but at the same time, there's this huge, heavy Conan axe attached to it. And there's also another character called Goyler. So there's these three, along with Shangolo, who are attacking Orion and Light Ray. The swinging axe, the whip axe, is no match against Orion's physical abilities here. He just simply hops around and kind of avoids the axe. Then Orion is able to take this wrestler's move. He grabs Goyle, and he grabs Trank, and he just knocks their heads together at this point. So Orion's been able to take care of two of these opponents. Gonna turn the page, and we see our ad. See our first ad, and it's for a Superman poster. It's the Superman peace poster, where he's holding up his two fingers. It's all for $1.50. I think I spoke about this poster once. And turn the page. So we go back to the battle. Goyle is not really very impressive. He's not bringing anything to the fight. And we see that the other guy with the axe, the whip axe, he's just getting tossed around too. And then Orion kind of throws them both back in the sea because they're both caught up in the whip axe. And but Orion senses that while they hit the sea hard, that they're still alive, and that there's something that's actually helping them to get hauled out of the sea. Orion says that it's brother Pyron, and apparently Pyron has he has a sleigh that can throw flames. But what Orion notices that this guy's a bit of a pussy, because he's saying, listen, he's not going to come in close. He's going to use this weapon from the sky where it's nice and safe. And that was always one of the criticisms of American military intervention. For example, America would use B-52 bombers to bomb Vietnam. Vietnam had really no defense against that. In Vietnam, they would also use napalm, but they would fly it in from jets. And napalm is a horrible thing. And there were people who are saying, listen, this type of unfairness is kind of like being a little bit of a scaredy cat here, where you want to inflict maximum pain, but you don't have the guts to really go in and do that. Those are some of the issues of the times, and that's some of the issues Jack Kirby is kind of addressing here. But nevertheless, because of the flames, whether this guy is a pussy or not doesn't matter, because he's dangerous. He has set the boat on fire, so whether he's a scaredy cat or not doesn't matter. He can do damage. Orion, he's looking for Light Ray. He doesn't see him. He's calling out his name. He's saying, we got to move out or die. Jack Kirby, once again, has spoken about experiences like this.
And there's 3 tanks coming up the street with infantry on both sides.
In World War II, going to turn the page. Orion comes across the old man, which he probably forgot about this guy. And he's tied to the mast. And Orion figures that it was Light Ray who did that. Light Ray probably thought he was doing him a favor by making sure he wasn't thrown off the boat here. But nevertheless, he's kind of like, he's going to end up like Joan of Arc. Well done, if these flames aren't stopped. By the way, there's really a lot of nice Kirby crackle here. Now, Orion wants to free the guy from the mass here. Light Ray immediately stops Orion. He's saying, no, we're still not yet. It's not dramatic enough. Light Ray saying, we need more drama. This drama's at 6. I want to go to 10. Orion doesn't understand this. He's the fight now guy. But it turns out that what had happened is there were 2 things. One, transmuting that cube that belonged to the Deep Six, it's finally coming to fruition. So Light Ray is reminding Orion that, hey, our secret weapon is almost ready. And he's also noting that Richard's facial features return to normal. He's still dead, but the thing is, he doesn't look like the Silver Surfer anymore. He basically kind of looks like Batman or Bruce Wayne. And I think Jack wanted to show that he can draw that type of face. And Light Ray is saying, by these things happening, my device maturing and morphing correctly, and Richard's body changing, that means something's happening, that the plan is going in action. And again, this is the sort of like the fate and a lot of the foreshadowing that Lucas liked, and he used this type of stuff in Star Wars. So this is Light Ray saying the plan is coming into action. We see this dramatic moment. We see that there are 2 oncoming entities on the glory boat, where there's no glory hole, and it turns out that it's the rest of the Deep Six and its mutated creatures. So it's coming forward and forward, getting closer and closer, sort of like the Death Star, as it was getting closer and closer and closer to the Rebel base. And again, George might have noticed that too. Hey, if I noticed it, George noticed it. And turn the page. Then we see this very strange 2-page layout. It's a layout, but at the same time, the 2 panels are completely different because they're from different points of view. We see the Deep 4 now. They're ready to end it all right here. They have its mutated creature. They are locked and loaded. They are ready for the end game here. The leader is saying, arrogant pygmies, die in the name of Darkseid and Apocalypse. And they're all set for battle here. And there is just no mercy. Gonna turn the page. Then we see the other side. We see New Genesis here. We see Light Ray. He is in full Broadway musical mode here. He's saying, let them dance, and I'm here, and this is my big moment here. So Light Ray he's gonna go out like in a flame of glory. We see Orion. He's there too. He's 100% behind this. He's saying, "Listen, let this be my last battleground." And we see the corpse of Richard. He's just laying there. So the thing is, he's a part of the battle, but at the same time, they're kind of weekending at Bernie's him. So he's kind of playing he's being Bernie here. If Weekend at Bernie's was the apocalypse, Bruce here, he's Bernie. So anyway, the pathos and the energy and the drama, because we all know the stakes. As illogical as this story is, we know the stakes. And I think at this moment, there was only one other moment I can think of where all this was captured in just, one small scene.
Say hello to my little friend!
And then turn the page. And then there's a huge burst of Kirby crackle here. Jack was definitely taking this panel easy here. He was like, God damn it, I need to take Roz to a movie. So he kind of finished this up quickly. He only used 3 panels. It turned out that what had happened is that there was the huge moment. Everything exploded. Light Ray was able to fly Orion out of the blast area. So the thing is that the casualties were obviously Richard, who was already a pre-casualty, and also the members of the Deep Six. What was left, their creature, they're all destroyed. They're all being sent to the source. The only thing is that Richard is going to be in a good place, and the other guys are going to be in a crappy place. And then, speaking of being in a crappy place, the old man is still tied to the mast, but he's kind of like still stuck in the middle of the ocean. Apparently, Light Ray did calculate for this, that he knew that the explosion and the rescue and so on could be done in a way that would protect the old man from drowning, but not from starving, not from dying of exposure, or any of those things. So basically, the old man, he's saying to himself, I'm alive, left to live out my life, wandering. Dude, your life is not going to go on too long. I'm wondering if maybe Light Ray, because he's not used to humans, he didn't know this about humans, that we kind of need to constantly eat and drink. And once he found out, maybe through osmosis in a conversation with some Earth people, both Light Ray and Orion had that uncomfortable look as they're thinking about this guy and thinking, maybe we should have brought him to shore. Maybe we should kind of got him some food. But then they would just continue their story, and they would just continue what was going on. Because remember, they're soldiers, and Jack Kirby talked about being in life and death situations. He recalled a moment where he was talking to a fellow soldier who was born in Brooklyn, like he was, and they were talking amongst each other, and in the middle of the conversation, the guy was shot dead.
And there's 3 tanks coming up the street with infantry on both sides. And this guy took a direct hit while he was talking with me. He was from Brooklyn.
And that's something, Jack had to carry that with him for literally the rest of his life. So he's kind of working out a lot of those emotions here. At least that's what I get the sense of. And we're told that the next issue, which is really Star Wars, if there's a lot of Star Wars in this issue, there is a crap load of Star Wars in this next issue. It's the origin of Orion, the origin of Scott-Free in The Pact. Both origins, they had the origin of Orion, they had the origin of Scott-Free. They're both terrific. And you can see why, if Lucas, you've read these comics, you can see why he took this as his template. Okay, so that's the end of the story. I'm not going to read the reprint. I couldn't. I'm sorry. but I will look at the letters page. It is kind of interesting. The letters page is actually out of California, so there's no interns from the DC office reading these. Letters are sent to California to a PO box, and that was manned by Mark Evander and Steve Sherman. Both of those guys, I believe, worked for Marvel Mania. They were longtime comic book people. Mark Evander was a longtime Kirby assistant. And they handled a lot of the administration stuff. I believe Mark Evander wrote about some of his experiences in Marvel Mania where they would try to sell original artwork from Jack Kirby, but the guy who owned the company was super sleazy, wouldn't pay him. And when Jack went to the offices to collect the artwork, the Mark Evander had to run interference with the boss to get him out of the building while Jack got into the building and got his artwork back. So that's some of the stuff that kind of like played into Jack Kirby's defensiveness. So anyway, they're telling readers that the response is that Kirby does read everything. So if you have an opinion and you took the time to write it out, Kirby's going to read it, even though we're going to be the ones answering back for him. Also, apparently, it seems like some readers had missed some of the earlier issues, and they were actually sending these guys money, saying, hey, can you send me some back issues? And Mark is saying, no, they can't do that. So, and they do return the money. They're mentioning that. They mention how bad, it's sort of an unhappy job for them, because they kind of wanted to keep that money. But they were ethical and they returned the money. But yeah, there was no real good way to get back issues back then. You kind of had to be lucky, really, to be honest. So the first letter is praise, saying that New Gods is a good one. That I'm enjoying this title, but he's always pointing out that he wants to see more of the gods and less of the human helpers involved, because the war is happening on 2 planets far away from Earth. But the thing is, because Earth is kind of like this convenient pawn, because apparently the mind that can interpret the anti-life equation that Darkseid is looking for exists on Earth. So, and because of that, Darkseid is going to be bothering Earth, if nothing else, to find out who that person is. And that's why the New Gods are involved, because they're trying to stop Darkseid from getting access to the anti-life equation.
That was the equation. Existence. Survival must cancel out programming.
And because of this, it follows, okay, that maybe they'll need human helpers to kind of help them along. And I know Kirby had done that. He had incorporated some kind of like Mission Impossible type characters, but I don't think some of the fans like that. They were saying, listen, too much espionage and not enough, superheroing. And I think that's what Bob is saying. And yeah, they actually ended up diminishing the roles of the human helpers. Because I think the first issue of the New Gods I ever read was the one with the Black Surfer. And there were a lot of humans in that story. They're talking about Kirby is probably clarifying what he's trying to do a bit more, and he's saying they're preparing readers that the next issue will go more into what's going on Apocalypse and New Genesis, some of the background about the war and why everything is happening. Because when readers came into this war, it was already happening. There was no build-up, and I think it took Jack until about issue 7 where he says, "Okay, I'm going to answer all these unanswered questions about the start." And that I remember that comic was very Star Wars like. And I think even it was used in a bit in the Justice League America movie. I think Joss Whedon. It's been so long. The one problem they're mentioning is Mr. Miracle, because Mr. Miracle is a part of it, but it's slightly different. Mr. Miracle is not really actively involved. He gets dragged into it. And then here's another letter. Is a college kid, and he says that I had a crummy summer job, but the thing is that me thinking about these stories has really improved things. I remember that would happen to me with the X-Men, where I was so caught up in their storyline, and it was almost like a soap opera to me. It actually was a soap opera to me. And I remember there were some really dark times that were not quite as dark because, I knew I would have these stories to read and enjoy and to think about. Saying that the New Gods is amazing. He's saying, yeah, this guy caught on to what Jack was trying to do. He's talking about the Forever People. That he's saying that that's really his favorite comic of the three. But yeah, he's basically saying you need a backstory here to really make this amazing. He's praising Jack Kirby's dialogue. Probably shouldn't be, honestly. Yeah, this guy's a big fan. He also wants to see Jack doing a little bit of Green Arrow, which is weird. Because I think he saw some of the reprints. I think Neil Adams was still doing the Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Neil Adams turned the page. He was not really a fan of Jack Kirby's artwork. He found it unpolished. He found it distorted, disfigured, and he honestly says, "Listen, I thought Jack was a great guy, but when I look at his artwork, honestly, it looks kind of ugly." That's what Neil Adams felt. He didn't voice this to Jack Kirby, but he had trouble understanding why other people liked his artwork. I loved his artwork at the time because, again, it was all energy. He had batshit stories to tell. He told them. I understood them, even though, again, they weren't always logical. And his artwork was just a lot of fun to me. And I knew what it was. It was just that the ugliness and the distortions just didn't bother me. Okay, there's another letter. Yeah, this is praising the Orion gang. Those are the humans. And but one thing he has a problem with was with the layouts. He said that they were all the traditional 6-panel layouts that you would get in a page, and there was nothing really creative about it. DC was just starting to get out of that. DC was a very conservative company because one of the powerful members of the board there was really, he treated DC Comics like his lottery ticket, and that he was so grateful to be a part of this huge money-making thing. He didn't want anything to kind of disturb the apple cart. And he said, listen, you have to have 6 panels, you have to have this, you have to have that. And that's why the stories kept repeating themselves, because he was like, he didn't want to try anything new because he feared that sales would drop. And I think DC was just starting kind of really with Neil Adams and then Irv Novak to sort of break away from that tradition of 6 panels. But they might have kept Jack in that tradition for a little while. So, because I do remember New Gods number 3, it seemed very traditional in terms of how the book was laid out. This was non-traditional. This was laid out the way a movie director would lay out the book. Lay out a comic, I should say. One guy's complaining about having to actually spend 25 cents for these comic books. I had mentioned this earlier. People think that it was those 100-page giants for 60 cents that was a money loser for DC. They weren't. They actually made money for DC, and DC still continued to print giant-size editions much more often than Marvel, because they did make money. Because there were kids who wanted to see those old stories, and but that didn't cost DC money. But what cost DC money was this one year, 71, 72, where they were charging 25 cents for their comics. And the reason why it was a huge money loss for DC was that Marvel was charging 20 cents for their comics, and they were giving the distributor 50% of the take rather than 40%. Because both Marvel and DC used the same distributors, the distributors wanted both companies to raise their prices and to make their product bigger. So it was the distributors who said, listen, you need to come out with more giant sizes because we're selling a lot of these, but at 15 cents, no one's making any real money. Marvel couldn't do that, so then they said, listen, let us print regular editions and we'll raise them a nickel. DC did not choose to match. DC stuck with the older deal where their comics were higher in price, but the distributor got 40% of the take, unlike Marvel, where Marvel's giving them 50%. And because of that decision, the distributor pushed Marvel comics more than DC comics, and that hurt DC sales, along with a few other things. That the fact that a lot of their comics were kind of like, not catching up with the times. They were kind of corny, to be honest. And they're talking about In the Days of the Mob. That was like a graphic novel Jack Kirby had done. And another one's kind of complaining about Light Ray isn't being I guess treated as he feels he should. This reader really likes Light Ray. Said that this guy is a breakout character, but you're not treating him like a breakout character, and you're focusing too much on Orion. Now, of my opinion, I think Orion was definitely the more interesting character. Light Ray was a character I think Jack Kirby wanted to have as his friend, because if you look at the Ben Grimm, Johnny Storm relationship, you see in Ben Grimm Orion, and in Johnny you see Light Ray, and I think Jack was sort of one of those guys who said, listen, we kind of need a Jiminy Cricket character who's going to be there, he's going to be smiling, he's going to be secure in who he is, and he's going to kind of keep us on the good side of things. Because, when you have this duality that, say, Orion has, or this inner anger that Ben Grimm has, you kind of need that character to soften them. I think the problem with a lot of Jack's characters was that he put them in interesting situations, but they weren't interesting people. Honestly, Light Ray's fine, but I don't think he's particularly interesting. And I think that was the problem. Whereas Peter Parker, I found to be an interesting character. Okay, so they're telling us about the next issue. They're wishing everyone a happy Christmas, Hanukkah. Jack was an observant Jew. So even though he kind of changed his name to be more like his hero, James Cagney. Nevertheless, he's saying, listen, Jewish kids read comics too, and they're gonna give you the origin of Scott Free and Orion. And again, this was a very Star Wars issue. And that's it. And that is my review of New Gods number 6. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.